Good morning, everyone. There's some bright lights here. I'm really excited to be here. Who would have thought? I have to figure out what I'm navigating here. I could have started earlier. So I'm Meredith Aronson. I direct our CRM efforts and digital experience services at the University of Arizona. I'm joined with Michaela Nichols here in the back, who's one of our implementation analysts. But we've been on this journey for a little while. Very excited. We came to be in a way that was very different than a lot of universities. We had a new president in 2018, and with that, we had the opportunity for a large-scale enterprise plan that was really, it opened the door to Salesforce being the enablement platform for engagement writ large for students, staff, alumni, external partners, and our public sort of community constituents. That was a huge opportunity. And it let us accelerate from 0 to actually, at our highest, 50 staff members between consultants and our own team to really get this program off the ground. But it was a big vision, and with that big vision came 3 years of really hard work, starting in 2018. Our interest in that was really, how big could we go? We had two sort of guardrails. One was we had Slate for admissions, so we don't do admissions at this point in time. And we had Blackbaud for our foundation. And so those are guardrails that we will, over time, continue to work on integrations, but we're everything else. And me being me, I like the everything else question because there's a lot of opportunity to think about what problems can we solve. So with that, some of the context that I've been focused on, particularly around events, is this large-scale enterprise question. How do you maximize a platform for engagement? That's, I think we all work on that one way or the other. But I felt from very early on that events offered something beyond, right? They offered the ability to organize a space that was quite chaotic on our campus, and a huge opportunity to grow engagement for enterprise. It's always a bit like a chess game at a university. I'm sure all of you are well aware. You sort of look for opportunities to step in. And so we found out about an RFP, and this is often how I begin to replace enterprise systems. And the RFP was for paid events. And I said, well, could we be a part of the RFP? We think there's an opportunity there. We were new in the Salesforce space. That RFP failed. I had nothing to do with its failure, mind you. And so that opened a door for another opportunity, which was we would like to think bigger about events. And so we started the next round and brought together a large community on campus of people doing events in lots of different systems, right? So we opened that RFP. Blackthorn was quite new at the time, but against a lot of the other more scaled organizations, we felt like there was a really wonderful opportunity to keep events in the Salesforce platform. And that was our commitment, and it remains our commitment today, because I was looking for engagement at large, as opposed to Salesforce, was solving specific problems and events we could do in different ways. So I wanted everything together. At this point in time, we're down the road a little bit. We have about 350 or so events users on campus. We have fought for every last one of them, but we're excited about that growth. We have 8,900-ish events over the years. Half of those are in this fiscal year. And so what we've seen is slow and incremental growth that I think is powerful. This current year, we're into some more fun, which is we finally got our Treasury Department to retire an Eventbrite contract for paid events, and so we're going to transition that. And I think the message underneath that I would give to each of you is look for the opportunities. Look for the opportunities to step in and replace sort of these systems that have been on the table for a while. It's been very effective for us in that process. So in this world, again, we have lots of Eventbrite. I'm sure all of you sort of live in these spaces as well. How do we replace that context, right? How do you do it in a way where event planners are often doing many jobs? What can you offer in this sort of space where you have websites, you have emails, you have lots of different contexts where people are aggregating and assembling event systems with lots of local tools because that's what they know to find. So shifting into enterprise, I've increasingly been of the mind that there's an ecosystem that really we're operating in that very few people talk about on campus in the ways that I think could be helpful to us all. It is ultimately, we have CRMs, we have social, we use Sprout Social at the University of Arizona. You have a range of things, including email. We do newsletters, obviously, with Marketing Cloud. We have Drupal as our system of sort of website development on campus at scale, but we also have Experience Cloud. How do those relate? And we've built a native mobile app in that system as well. So we have all these things telling a story about how do people engage with the front end of an event. How as a user do I find events? That is chaotic at best today. And every year, year over year, we make a little progress. We work a lot with central marketing to try to begin to build a story of what channels make the most sense for what kind of stuff. How do you connect these systems that are really not well connected today? So this is stuff we've been working on year over year, and I think beginning to make some progress year over year. What I thought I'd do today, because it's not a large block of time, we are going to do a little more conversation on this tomorrow. Matt and I are with Ed Summit going to do something. But what I thought I'd do today is talk a little bit about creating a way for collecting events from multiple places, and thinking about how you could present them in a more limited context. And so one of the things when I sat back at the beginning of this, I thought, there's some systems we're never going to get. Because at the end of the day, it's sort of like casting the net, right? How do we get all the events into one place so that our students, our staff, ultimately our community members can find all the things going on our campus? It's chaos, truly chaos. I'm sure none of your systems are like that. And so we thought a little bit about, okay, what does that mean? So I'll start at the bottom of this chart. What I knew is Ticketmaster was never going to give up their data, right? Some things you can't change. And so we said to our arts events, we said, we still want access to your data. It's important to us, right? Because I'm not going to create that, but I know that our customers want that. So we built integrations. We use Boomi as an integration platform, but we have APIs, and we bring data in to show it as what I call shell event. It's not going to be managed as a Salesforce event. We're not going to track people from that data source, but I can present it. The same with our sports. Athletics is not going to come into our system for lots of other reasons, but I know how important those events are for our brand at the University of Arizona. So again, integration. There are times where you say yes. I say no to most integrations, by the way, but there are a few that I say yes to. On the top part of this is a different strategy, which is there are contexts where people want to create events so they can be visible, but they don't want to manage that. They just want to make the request. They're from outside our system. They're from other contexts. So we allow, through forums, people to create events. We have a university calendar that's in Drupal, and we let the people who run the university calendar curate the ones that they're willing to say yes to. So they come in through a form, we create a shell event in Salesforce, and then we allow them to approve that in a list view, which is what you see on the right. And then we do integrations on the back end to allow that to appear on Drupal sites, right? So sort of a single system for end-to-end presentation. At the same time, we built an experience site, because what we wanted to do, unlike the university calendar which said we curate events, we wanted a democratic system. We wanted anyone who wanted to create events. We wanted a pile of them that could live somewhere. We wanted everything in Salesforce, right? And with that, we also knew that we wanted a space so people didn't get overwhelmed with that, right? Lots and lots of events. So we built a preference center within our Experience Cloud, which we call Cat Cloud, which segments by audience, either student or staff, automatically. We know who you are. But we also then allowed them to set the kinds of things they're interested in seeing by topic, or by the audience of that event, or by other contexts. And by setting the preference center, their view of the events that they have direct access to within the Experience Cloud, only one of the channels, is limited to things they're interested in. So again, a simple way of saying, how do you take this sort of chaotic system? How do you begin to create a space where people have a much more limited set of interactions around things they're interested in? We also do newsletters and other kinds of things with Marketing Cloud to augment this, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is say, how do we get that universe of many, many, many events and bring it down to something that becomes personalized for our end users? So within this, there are many things that we're doing related to that. Like why do we care and what have we learned in this process? I have single-mindedly stayed focused on enterprise each and every day in each and every conversation that I have with people. The goal is to begin to build this assemblage of events at scale and then to personalize that to individual users. That at the end of the day is really where I focus my attention. What we know about event planners, as I'm sure you as well, is they're busy people. And to Chris's comment, like, how do you make their world easy is one of the challenges, right? We've done a lot of local manipulation of the platform to try to begin to support that day over day. But again, always realizing that how these individuals are building their events, how they're managing them, is only one of their jobs in general. So we do a lot of work in the background to that end. And at the end of the day, we focus a lot of our development attention on that individual end user in terms of being able to help them find the specific events that bring them the most value. So customizing that end user has been an area of direct focus. Anyway, with that, I hand it back to Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you. Amazing job as always. Our next customer spotlight is Mr. Doug Bennett from Harvard University. Give it up for Doug.
Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. There are 18 of us from Harvard at this conference, so the odds are in your favor that you're going to meet one of us at some point. My name is Doug Bennett. I'm the Associate Director of the Salesforce platform. Harvard's a big place, so I want to stress I'm from the Division of Continuing Education. We are part of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at Harvard. And we kind of are all things to all people. We have programs from for the high school students all the way up to retirees. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem since Salesforce Classic, so like probably since 2014. And today I'm going to talk to you about what we did for our high school program, our pre-college and secondary school program at Harvard. Every summer, we host about 9,000 high school students, minors, on our Cambridge campus. What could go wrong? So I praise my colleagues that actually handhold those students throughout all their programs and events. One of our problems that we had here, or one of our use cases that we had, is that we had to offer about 200 different events to those 9,000 students. 2,000 of those students had to go through a special program where they were only allowed to pick 2 events from different event categories. So that was sort of the problem that we were trying to solve. And you'll see examples of some of those events that students had to pick. So they had to pick things from categories like social events, Saturday events, Sunday events, things like Red Sox games, history tours, but also college planning workshops. So pre-Blackthorn challenges, and by the way, we picked our hardest use case to implement Blackthorn with. This was the very first thing that we did, which is this is what we do. So there was no native way to limit registrations to just 2 events in different categories. So we had to come up with a different solution. We also wanted to make sure that we continued to use our student portal. So our student portal was essential because 9,000 students, some of them are asked to leave during the course of their program. And when you're asked to leave, we also don't want you to have access to those events that we're offering up everybody else, right? So we have a student portal that also had a custom task that we had created, not related to Blackthorn, but what we did was marry the custom task with Blackthorn through OmniScript and ScreenFlow. Like Chris, I like to build things. My background is an admin and developer, so I like to build things and really push Salesforce to the greatest extent. And our prior solution was using Qualtrics Forms. So we have saved Dr. Jackie Newcomb right there in the audience. We saved her hundreds of hours of time, her and her staff, by using Blackthorn in this custom solution. So because we had a custom task within our student portal, we were able to segment through from our SIS, which was Banner, and push that task to certain students, the cohort that we wanted, to use this OmniScript and custom ScreenFlow modal. This is just a picture of that modal where they had to pick 2 events out of different categories. So basically built a ScreenFlow and used it within our Experience Cloud. That ScreenFlow and OmniScript, and with that we had some Flux cards and data raptors. All of that had access to all the Blackthorn objects and architectures. So it was a great way to extend the functionality of using Blackthorn architecture within our student portal. So students started their custom task, and they went through and picked 2 events out of each category. And when I built the flow, I made sure that we enforced capacity limits. We enforced that they didn't pick 2 of the same events in their choices. So we also, once students were registered, they got to see their events that they picked through their My Events in the student portal. We also had our staff check in students through the Blackthorn app. So when it came time to get on the bus to go to the Red Sox game, our staff were checking in students to take attendance and make sure everybody was there. We also had a really good turnout. So we have 9,000 students using Blackthorn. 2,000 of those went through this OmniScript. Over almost 12,000 students signed up, or attendees signed up for these events throughout the summer. And I should stress it wasn't just one session. We had various sessions of 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and 7-week sessions. So we had to repeat these signups over and over again throughout the summer. And here's just sort of a slide of our student portal. Once they did sign up for their events, they were able to go back to their event listing component, which Blackthorn provides. So out of the box with Blackthorn, you get that component within your Experience Cloud that you can just drag and drop and start to filter by event groups or other categories. So our students were able to filter out their own events, which ones that they were signed up for, and of course it was mobile friendly as well. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Great job. Great job. Thank you, Doug. And next up, we have Valerie Turner from the University of Northern Iowa. Valerie, come on up.
Okay, thank you.
Big green button in the middle, progressive.
Green button in the middle, okay. That one? Okay, whoops, no. Hey, everybody, good morning. I'm from the University of Northern Iowa. There we go. I am our CRM administrator and developer and Blackthorn guru. Everybody turns to me, especially when there are problems. Usually user-end problems, not system problems. So just to give you some background, we're on Campus Solutions for our student system. In 2018, we began our Salesforce integration, or implementation, I'm sorry. And then April 2019, Salesforce went live with admissions and recruiting. And then January of 2020, we began our Blackthorn implementation. In March of 2020, we had events open, people registering for admissions. April 2020, COVID. So that's kind of some background there. So I'm going to take you through our journey of UNI events going from homegrown to chaos to Blackthorn. So I can make fun of the thing on top. That's what I wrote in Perl about 20 years ago. And that's what we were using until Blackthorn. So it was difficult to use. It was one of those things of like, oh, admissions came to me and they said, hey, we just want this for visit days. And I said, are you sure? Only visit days? And they said, yes. So then it became a monster. Then it was campus visit days, community college visits days, orientation. Other groups on campus wanted to use it. They looked at it. They said, I don't get this. I'm not doing it. So then they went to chaos. They went to email lists, spreadsheets. I put a fax machine. I don't know if they fax things. It was quite, but it was 20 years ago. And then Google Drive, which drove me nuts because now we've got this document open to the world that has people's registration information. So not cool. So this is our setup right now. We have an on-prem Oracle database that we pull data in from all of our systems on campus. Our student system is Campus Solutions. We pull in a little bit of alumni data, but Foundation and alumni are definitely completely separate from us. But we do have some contact information on alumni so we can communicate with them. We use human resources, university housing, and then online application for admission is in our custom web system, which is also where the 20-year-old event system was. So then basically the data goes into our staging database that's on-prem. We use Boomi to push it to Salesforce, and then we have Marketing Cloud. So then that data that was in the events was going to Campus Solutions, then the staging table, then Salesforce. So we were getting like once a day updates on events, which was not working for admissions. So our solution was to start with Blackthorn, and we started with visit days. And then then we went to campus visits, then we went to orientation. Well, once it was in orientation, campus became very aware because orientation is so campus-wide. And so we kind of did opposite of Meredith where we started small, went bigger. So then we said, okay, we're gonna rein this in before it becomes chaos again. So we met with groups all across campus and we identified key areas that could become unique groups within the system. So then we used delivered Salesforce security to set up the systems. We used record types on the event, one for each of the areas that we had identified. Then we created public groups to put the event maintainers and creators into. And then we used sharing rules to join the event type to the public group. And that way, everybody stayed in their lane, they behaved, their data was secure, it was unique to them. And that rose that level of confidence in the system to a way that we hadn't had before. And people were very comfortable using it. It's very straightforward. It lets them know exactly what they have that belongs to them, and they're not having to navigate through all of Salesforce because if they're only doing events, they only get access to events. So the benefit for us was now we have one system using events all across campus, which was unique for us, which makes reporting, payments, everything standardized. And that was huge. We also can have standard on-demand communications through Blackthorn, which again, through COVID, when we were rescheduling events, canceling events, providing more information about events, that was a huge, huge win for us. We're currently supporting 37 different report types across campus. They're not unique to each area. So for instance, we have like, a college, every college has an event type. And then within that, we have some of our specialty areas that are not necessarily in a college, but kind of off in their own thing. And then we have, admissions, advising, student success, things like that. So what did we learn from this? At first, we said, okay, we have 30 licenses. We started off slowly building the groups. And we thought, okay, we're going to give, 30 administrative licenses. And we said, we're just going to make an admin for each of the groups. We'll teach them how to do it. IT walks away. That didn't work. Because we had people who were super users, for instance, admissions and areas like that, and some of our other lessons, camps, those kind of things. And they were building events all the time. And so they were experts. Then we had people that were doing like, I have a conference that is twice a year, and there's no point in having them go through this every time. So what we did was we took the licenses and we just redistributed them, giving more to the power users because they were the ones that actually could be independent. And then IT offered to help the users with smaller events. And so that has worked out a lot better because the people who weren't doing it as often, a lot of times had complicated forms because they were doing a conference or something like that. And then the form would have a problem because they didn't set it up right, and then we'd have to go fix it, and it was just a lot of extra work that we didn't need. So, and then we found out, well, you know what? Most of these events are repeats of something they've had in the past. They're making a slight adjustment. So we said, okay, we're just gonna, IT will be responsible. We'll clone it, and then we'll hand it back to that user that just has to go in and update the things that are prevalent to this new event. And then in the end, after all of this, it took a couple of years of all this happening, we came up with some documentation that is UNI specific for event setup. So this is the form that we have. It's called Define the Events. So if someone says, I want an event, and they're not one of our super users, we point them here and we say, okay, here are all the things we need to know. Answer all those questions in a Word doc or something, attach it to a ticket, and we'll take care of it. And so because we've done this, now we're able to bring in some student employees that have been augmenting us because it's a recipe. And you know, there is a lot of back and forth because especially the people that aren't doing events very often, they tend to forget, you know, like, well, you have to host the image, we're not hosting the image, you know, things like that. But that has all helped out really well. Just as for conclusion, Blackthorn's really filled a critical need for us. It's a tool set which is amazing because our power users, the things they're doing is incredible. Especially, we have one person that does all these youth camps that have a lot of required documentation that has to come along with it. We have to have contact information, you know, and she just runs with it. And then she's teaching other power users how to do those kind of things. We're using payments, pay later, waitlisting, which we've never had before, which has been a real game changer for us. And then also the customized emails that we can make real friendly and with our branding so it's obvious where it's coming from, as opposed to the Wild West where who knows what went out. And then for our future plans, we plan to make wider use of mobile apps. Our student activities group, you know, they have movie night or some dinner or something like that. Well, all they collect are name and email. And so they just want to check in 200 people, bing, 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 bing. And then we're currently investigating payment schedules. And for people here who have been involved with us with payment schedules, we know we've got some people we've got people in one camp, people in another camp, and we're trying to meet in the middle. So thank you.
Thank you again to Valerie, everybody. All right. Our last customer spotlight is about to begin. Ashley Giles from the Association of Former Students at Texas A&M University. Please give it up for Ashley.
All right, good morning. So yes, I work with Texas A&M University, the Association of Former Students, and what I do in my day-to-day is I am the event planner. So I'm the one that lives in Blackthorn all day long. I plan events for former students from class reunions to away game tailgates. I work with our young alumni demographic, planning fun football events for them. And then the last piece is our affinity groups. And so we've got 15 chartered networks, and I work with them all day long to plan fun events. And so I am the individual that gets to live in Blackthorn. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm the smart one that got it integrated and can understand all the things on the back end, but what I wanted to share today is just my experience and how I use it every single day. So pre-Blackthorn, we were in this system that, in my opinion, as I would log in each day, there'd be like a dial-up tone that was in my head. It was like, beep-doo, it's loading. It was very old. Did what it needed to do, which was great, but we were definitely having some challenges. With the biggest thing is everything was so segmented. We had this database. We didn't have an event platform, but I worked in this old database. We had reports that sat over here. We had payments over here. We had, I mean, you name it, it was all separated. And so the hardest part was I would put everything into this database system, and then I'd be like, all right, where's my event registration? Where do I go? There was no web component. So then I'd run to our web team and say, hi, it's me again. I need another web page created. I need this, I need that. There was nothing talked to each other. There was no instantaneous, oh, you've put in everything you need for your event. Now send it off and let people register. We didn't have that. So that was truly the biggest challenge. So everything was touched a lot, touched by a lot of people on staff. Not a bad thing, but could lead to more potential errors or mishaps or miscommunications and things of that sort. And so everything was all over the place. And so with that, we knew, okay, we've got to make some changes because this is not working for us. And so in came Blackthorn. We're fairly new. We've had it since not this January, but the January prior is when we went live. And the fun thing was, again, I'm not the director of IT or director of IS, and so they're what I like to call the masterminds behind the scenes that got this whole platform up and running, and they said, here you go. And I said, oh, all right, here we go. And so right before that, we were actually in Eventbrite, which I forgot to touch on, which, again, separate, didn't speak to anything, made my job a little bit more difficult, and I think Meredith had touched on it earlier, where as an event planner, I mean, you're not just in the event, you're working with vendors and caterers. There's so many different hats, and I was like, I've got to have something that really feels all in one, working in all these different systems, asking multiple people on staff to help me. This is not efficient, this isn't conducive. So then we transitioned into Blackthorn about a year and 3 months ago, and I can do everything on one spot, which is probably one of the easiest things about what I do now is I don't have to log into one system and log into another system. We are in Salesforce, we use Ascend, and so Blackthorn sits right inside of Ascend, which is extremely convenient. When I was training my team actually on Blackthorn, they were like, all right, what do we have to learn? And I was like, we're not learning anything. You're gonna log into Salesforce and you're gonna stay in there all day long, and you don't have to learn another system, which was huge for us because, like I said, we were all over the place. And so one of the really cool things that I personally have enjoyed is just the data that I can capture. Again, we're kind of just out of the box with Blackthorn. We haven't done too many different things. But one of the things that's really neat is when someone registers, their event registration can now tie back to their constituent record in Salesforce. So I don't have to ask for all this data on the event registration. It's already sitting there in Salesforce. So when they register, I link the two, or they actually are automatically getting linked on their own. I don't have to do that myself, which is another great feature. But they're linked. And so at any given point for some of the events that I do, my boss might say, hey, who's a current donor? Because they need a specific little name tag. And I'll say, okay, well, let me go look at this report, and boom, I get a list of all the donors. I can merge data, put it into a name tag, all the things. For one of our things that we do in the fall, we have what's called our Fall Leadership Council. Our governing body comes in, and we have to find the oldest living veteran that's registered to do the pledge. Well, back in the day, I would be searching through all these reports, which again, mind you, were not updated instantaneously. It was an overnight update that would happen. Where now I can, instead of asking these people on the front end when they're registering, hey, I need all this data about you. As soon as they register, I get with our IS team and I say, I just need this additional column that's gonna pull data from their constituent record, plop it into the report, and in a moment I can say, oh, okay, this person's 75, he's a veteran, all right, tell my boss, this is the person that's available to do the pledge because they're registered. So just little things like that that really have been a game changer. Mostly reporting, honestly, because that's where I pull a lot of my data from to put together events, whether it's dietary restrictions. I mean, you name it, it's all sitting on a report. So this is an example of that. This is actually live data. It's myself and my coworker, and this is only just a small snapshot of some of the reports that we have. A lot of them can have, I mean, you name it, as many columns of data that we want that's pulling off the constituent record that's tying back to their specific event registration. So I shared this just to give y'all some examples. It might be a little hard to see, but for me personally, everything's, like I said, all in one spot. I don't have to go to all these different areas. So the impact, as mentioned, the reports are updated much faster instantaneously. So there's no lag in waiting for data. I can talk with caterers right away and give them an updated number of, hey, we've got this many people that want this and that many people that want that. The data, as mentioned, it sits on the constituent record, so we can actually look back and see, oh, did this individual attend this event last year? Have they attended it for 5 years? Some of the stuff that was mentioned by Chris earlier, what's coming down the road, makes me excited to think, okay, how can I just ask this robot of sorts that says, hey, what has happened in the last 5 years with this event? So for me as an event planner, that's really exciting. We can operate out of one system. It doesn't require as much training on the team because you're already in Ascend, and so Ascend and Blackthorn are integrated. And then the data from registrations is much cleaner. With our brief stint with Eventbrite and things like that, it was just all over the place. It was fuzzy. So Blackthorn has made that a lot better for us as well. So some lessons learned and key takeaways. We actually, as I said at the beginning, we really haven't made any customizations. We're out of the box. We're very brand new. And so one of, I feel like, the lessons learned for us is Blackthorn has really helped us, even though we've only scratched the surface of it. And so we've had a great experience with it out of the box. 1 year of implementation, the department that I sit in, I'm actually the only one really on staff, the only department that's currently using it, where the goal in the future is to get other departments that work with our current students. If you know anything about A&M, we're really proud about our Aggie rings, so we do about 16,000 rings a year, with about 50,000 people coming to any given ring day. And so the goal would be to turn all of those ring days into an event where people can register for that event. And it sits on their record. They're ordering their ring. All the things. We're really excited. One of the last things I wanted to touch on that was a really big takeaway for us and this is probably one of my more recent favorite features of Blackthorn. We use Stripe for our payment processing, and Stripe sits in Black. It all talks to each other. Again, everything is all in one for me, so it's great. I came from this system of working in 8 different areas, and so I was actually texting a girl on my team last night. I said, "What's one of your favorite things that you love about Blackthorn, so I can share it?" And she said, "We can process payments on someone's invoice in Blackthorn." And I was like, I know it sounds really silly, but when you're sitting on the invoice, it's a simple refund to this person, partial refund. So I promise I'm not an influencer. We just came from such a system that was so chaotic, as some of the other speakers just mentioned. I feel like that's such a word that we related to. It was complete chaos. And so now that everything feels streamlined, it's in the same spot. For me and what I do in my day-to-day, it's really been a game changer. So for that, we're grateful. I don't know if Noah is in here. Noah is the individual on Blackthorn who probably got annoyed with me for about, the first 6 months that we were getting in the system. I asked him the same questions over and over, and I'd get on Zoom and I'd say, I know this is a dumb question, and I know I've already asked you this, but I need you to tell me again. But we've really loved it, and we're really thankful. So with that, I think we're on to the Q&A.
All right, if we could have all of our customer highlight panelists back up on stage, that'd be great. So thank you to everybody who has submitted questions so far. We really appreciate you using the technology that's available to you to do that. I actually have a Salesforce report right here with all of those questions in it, so we're going to be utilizing that to ask a bunch of questions. If there's any questions that you have that are pressing or burning and you really want to know, we've got Lexi and Ellie right there with our microphone standing in the back, and they will be able to come up to you so you can ask your questions live and direct. So let's start off. First question to the entire group. Yes.
I think you should point out that what Matt is reading, this is coming out of our Salesforce report we just ran. Everybody who's texted in. There's no separate tech or anything.
Nope.
It's coming live out of our own board report.
Yep.
The same thing that you should be running now.
Yeah. This is live from what we call our LMO, our core Salesforce org. I'm running it right off of Salesforce Mobile right now, which is fantastic. All right, so as you've grown, as you've adopted Blackthorn and other technologies, could you speak to how you've handled security, like org-wide defaults and sharing settings, especially if you have a multi-tenant org? And this is open to anybody on the panel. So who would like to start? Doug?
I'll go ahead.
All right.
Yeah, so org-wide defaults are public. We haven't really messed with any of that because we use visibility rules so well. So we have Banner integrated, sending information up to Salesforce, where we drive a lot of the visibility of what people can see using the visibility rules. So that's kind of how we've built what people can see and do within Blackthorn. We have a federated model with our events, our event managers. So every department that is using Blackthorn has experts that go through. And by the way, we'll say you guys have an excellent portal, great documentation, really good modules to onboard new event managers to get them up to speed with how to use Blackthorn. So, yeah.
Great. Anybody else want to take an answer?
I'll probably be pretty irresponsible. Michaela, you can wave broadly when I do. We made a decision to keep we have a permission set for events. And so if you want our core platform, we keep the contact fully open, but we actually provide people the opportunity to have privacy rules with events. Our view was we wanted to keep the platform as open as possible. So distinct maybe from your system where you're like, well, you have your compartment. We do appropriate use training as we build out the system to ensure that people understand they have a responsibility when they're using the system. And so we've not locked things down. People can have private events, but with our framework, we want people to have the profile of visibility across.
What's kind of unique with us is we have people who are building events who don't have access to enrolled student data. So that's why we created the separate kind of swim lanes. It's because we wanted to, if you don't need to see student data, you don't need to see student data. But for the people who do, we allow them to have that crossover.
Lovely. Ashley, did you want to add anything? Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is we currently aren't, it's really just sitting with the Alumni Association, so we haven't had any, we're not sharing data with, there's nothing happening with A&M main campus. There's other nonprofits that are supporting A&M. It's really just my department that's using it, so we don't currently have any struggles, thankfully, with that.
Okay, thanks. So this was an interesting question that caught my eye. And this is, again, for the entire group. How many event setting records do you have to manage your events, and how do you delineate when you need a new event settings record? Oh, that was a big sigh.
Yeah, that's a challenge. We try to train the admins to reuse their event settings and use it as much as possible, but because they're the ones who build it, they're aware of it. So then the challenge is, like when IT comes in and is asked to build an event, we kind of go through all the event settings and say, okay, what looks like it's the best match? And so that's something that we still need to be working on.
We clone a lot of our events, so those settings roll over from event to event. A lot of what we do is very similar. And so we've turned on and off settings as we've gone, but primarily each event truly does have the same settings. We don't really change those too much.
Okay, cool. For those of you that have multiple constituencies that you work with, whether it's staff and students, alumni, multiple groups that you're working with together, how did you bring all of those groups and viewpoints together across your organization? And Meredith, I might pick on you a little bit for this one because you have a lot of constituencies that you work with. And how are you handling change management, especially if there's this old guard mentality?
Oh, that's a loaded question. If I understand it properly, so bring me back if I'm not. I mean, the multi-constituent for events to me is not, unless I'm missing something, is not the complexity. Like the event context works across constituents. The only requirement we have in our platform is FERPA training. Anybody who comes in is FERPA trained. So then after that, we feel like respectful, appropriate use is where we focus. I guess I don't. I'm not sure I have a lot to add there. I don't think that the context of use have not been something that we've focused. I'd love to hear more about the question. Whoever asked the question, maybe.
Yes. I don't have the name, but the number is in here, and I can read that out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We'll come back to that. Maybe that's something that we handle more in the group settings that are going to handle right after. Doug, did you have something you wanted to add?
I can add to that. So we use, because everything that we serve up in Blackthorn is seen in Experience Cloud, so we're using audiences within Experience Cloud to control who sees which component. So if you go into that Blackthorn component, you get to choose one event group. And I know that it's in your roadmap or being delivered soon to have many event groups to an event, which I'm looking forward to. It's live. Excellent. So when I get home, I'm going to be testing that. But because of what that imposed, that we use audiences to control which component constituents saw within the same events page within the Experience Cloud.
Yeah, it's the same. Absolutely.
Great. Ashley, a question came in for you. Oh, yes. As someone who lives and breathes Blackthorn in your daily life, what is the biggest challenge you're dealing with now?
Oh, man. What I would say what the biggest challenge is all of our attendees that have attended our events for years are so used to what it used to look like when you'd register. And so it's not only training our internal team of, hey, this is the new way we're going to do things. It's all the former students that we work with and getting their feedback of, I don't quite understand this. I'm not sure where I click continue. How do I, they've skipped picking a session for someone. So it's really, I think my biggest challenge is almost training all those thousands of students, former students, that are trying to attend these events, just getting them used to a new system. Because the old system we were in was, I think, 20, 25 years of, that's what we used. So truly, that's probably the hardest part is just getting them familiar with it, helping them know how to navigate it, understand it, because it does look completely different because we didn't have that web component before. We kind of built it ourselves, and so now this is a more standard feel that everybody's going to feel. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
Makes sense. Anybody else want to add anything to that? No? Okay. Valerie, we got a question for you as well. How cumbersome does it get to maintain the different record types for the different events that you have?
Now that we have the groups set up, we're able to get everyone into our existing groups, our existing record types. So, there was some setup up front and creating the sharing rules. The other thing, you can only have so many sharing rules. What is it, 50 or something on an object? So that was something we had to be mindful of too. But it's not really. I think something I would change is originally we were thinking we were going to have page layouts, the field access unique to each of these groups. And then we realized the groups were so diverse and everyone was so excited about using events that we didn't want to just say, okay, well, you only get to see these 10, you only get to use these 10 fields on attendee. So in the end, right now I have 37 different permission sets. And I would take that back and just make one permission set, one admin, one what we call maintainers, which is the limited access, and then viewer. And then using the public groups controls the data. But once we had it set up, it works great.
Nice. Great. So why don't we open this up to the floor? Is there anybody who has a question that didn't submit one beforehand? We've got folks with microphones who can come right around to you. Don't be shy.
Something I want to add, the support team at Blackthorn has been fantastic.
Yes.
I've asked many, many questions over and over again. Like, I just don't get it. And everyone's always so patient. And I love we have an assigned support person. And I just was talking with her last week after 5 o'clock. And, I said, oh, I know this is after your working hours. And she was there for me. So that was great.
I'm going to echo that. Our use case would not have been possible without having Blackthorn support available. The ability to sign up same day for a 15-minute or a 30-minute office hour and ask questions to somebody that meets you where you're at and doesn't escalate you to somebody else. They work with you and they find your solution and figure out your problem. So.
Great. Thank you for doing that. Please, and that reminds us, please take advantage of office hours whenever you can. It's one of the greatest things that we can do, and the team here actually is live for Ask the Experts right outside, so you can do that during your networking break. Chris. Ooh. Hey, Ashley. You can find how to sign up for office hours right on our customer community, and you can speak to any member of our CSX team, and they can guide you along the way. So, any other questions? Oh, we got a question right there in the middle.
Yeah, everyone, thank you. That was incredible presentations. A follow-up for Meredith. What's going on the Blackthorn side when it comes to events that are coming in? I think you said from Sidearm and Ticketmaster. Are you creating a stub record in Blackthorn? So that's the thing that's enabled to say?
Yeah.
So that's a nod. And then just a quick follow-on. Maybe I misheard, but in the Experience Cloud section, do you have students with the capacity to create events that other students can go to? Or is that not, that I mishear that?
Yes, so the form that was on that upper left corner is really a path in. We built that for our central marketing group that does the university calendar because they wanted to curate, from the community, people can ask for events that go onto our university calendar, which is a Drupal site. But at that point, I felt very strongly that that was a way to allow for students within a department, for example, to request the same thing within their department. That hasn't taken off yet, but we haven't pushed hard. We have that because we have that Drupal integration. I do feel like that the process of being able to create the stub event creates a lot of flexibility. What it doesn't do, which I think is a long-term weakness that we'll figure out what we do about, is you could check in to the event, but it doesn't actually capture anything about the participants. And I think that is a weakness, but it allows for these to come into a single platform to be promoted, which was my first goal. So I think there's some trade-offs there, right, that we'll continue to work on. I can see a future where we would build out a richer interface somehow within an experience site to allow more capture and like loose management of the event. What you can't do is manage the event when you do that, right? So it's not optimal, but it's a way to get the promotion of events at scale.
Thank you.
And Jonathan, I'll add as an answer, that use case, very doable. Please talk to our Ask the Experts team right after this, and they'll be able to help you see how it's set up. Another question.
Hello, thank you all for your stories. Based on your experience, when you have folks register who are unmatched, do you have a strategy for using leads versus contacts? I'm probably the worst person to answer this question, but we don't use leads a lot at the University of Arizona. Early on, we made that decision. We orient more leads to other so to speak, other kinds of problems. And so the answer to that is we don't manage that particularly well, but we have not yet entered into thinking about using leads more aggressively.
What we do, we don't use leads either, but we do have attendees that we don't create. So we only have contacts. And so, but we don't always have all attendees be created as contacts. It depends on the event type. And so actually, this is a whole other presentation, but in the event setup, there's an option to say, I want the attendees to become contacts. And so we have a custom process. We have an object called submission, where the attendees go into the submission object. We bring it back down into our on-prem system, run it through our custom search match that we wrote, and then push it back up to Salesforce to create as a contact. And that has worked really well for us, because then we get those 8th graders, that we know are going to come in hopefully 6 years. And we give them an admit term, and we give them an opportunity, and sometimes on the form we ask them what they're interested in, if they were going to go to college right now.
I can't speak to that because every user we have is authenticated through Experience Cloud. So.
Yeah, to my knowledge, we don't use leads. We will have registrations automatically connect, and for anyone that doesn't connect and that's kind of left blank, the goal is to get all of those blank ones created into constituent records. We're just not there yet. So we're doing them as we can, and for some of our events where it really matters, we will go ahead and have them created in the system. Events where we can just bypass it for now, we will. But I think that's a future thing is definitely making sure that everybody matches. And we will authenticate, and that's coming down our pipeline soon, where that's, I think, going to be a game changer for us as well.
Thanks. Can you speak a little bit more to that, why that's going to be a big deal for your organization?
So one of the things that I don't even know if I'm the best person to be able to even answer this, because I don't know all the things about SSO. But I don't know that it's necessarily going to be just specific to events, but authenticating just to get into the system so that they're logged in as themselves, versus just here's an event registration page login. It'll pre-fill data that's going to pull from their record once they log in. It may already pre-populate their dietary restrictions that they've got sitting on their profile. When they make a change, it'll speak back to their record and update that change. So there's going to be some personalized data that will already sit in on the event registration once they get authenticated. And that's the little piece that I know. I know there's a whole lot more to it, but the way that it'll affect event registrations, that's what's been explained to me.
That's great. That's great. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, well then I have a final question for all of you that came in through the text. And it's, what are your next steps for Blackthorn? Are there any use cases that you have your eye on that you're just waiting for the right time to implement? And what might that be? So we'll start here with Doug and work our way down.
Yeah, our next step is to use Blackthorn in our faculty portal. So I talked before about our use case with our student portal. We have a separate faculty portal where there's basically a faculty pipeline of faculty that propose courses. They get approved, they get hired. So we're going to be implementing Blackthorn there to design events around onboarding faculty, training faculty, developing specific things like how to structure your syllabus, things like that. So there's going to be a lot of use cases there on the faculty side.
That's exciting. We're going to talk about that some more. One of the things we're starting to lean in on, we've been interested in, we have a QR code we use on the external ID for event check-in if you haven't registered. But on our campus, we are actually, as we speak, piloting a digital ID for Apple and Google and Apple Pay. And so with that, we're interested in thinking about the people that we don't know very well, and finding a path to credentialing and authentication of visitors to our campus to be able to check into events. And the process for how we do that. So, you know, part of our challenge is all of these folks who we know very little about, who come to an event, who are not students, not faculty. How do you actually build unique identifiers, and how do you credential them so that when we get to building a public Experience Cloud site, we can include the events there. We can also have people authenticate, sign up, and RSVP for events there. So I'm excited about that because there's a lot of big flexibility for external people coming up for us. And events, I feel like that's like the, you know, alumni and external people, that's like the gold mine for engagement.
For us, I think what Doug talked about, I'm going to talk to you about that too, about having register for multiple sessions and keeping all that straight and making sure they don't register for too many. And we're also looking at payment scheduling for our School of Music. They have music lessons for children and adults, and just needing to be able to spread those out over the calendar year.
I think for us, it would be taking it, Blackthorn that is building wide. Like I said, I'm the only department that's currently operating out of it, and other departments are sitting in other separate systems. And so getting those individuals trained up in the system, that way our entire team's in one place. And then I think the second piece is we've never really had a way to track people who have actually checked in. I mentioned we do name tags and things like that, and if a name tag wasn't picked up, we'd kind of just look at the leftovers and think, oh, okay, well, I guess these 8 people didn't come. And so using the mobile check-in app, I think, is going to be huge for us to really see who's here, who didn't come in, and just actually track that data since we haven't been able to do that before.
That's awesome. Well, thank you to all 4 of you. If we can give it up for our panel, that was fantastic. Thank you very, very much.